The Jedi Order stood for justice, discipline, and wisdom. They preached peace while wielding power, claiming to be the galaxy's greatest protectors. But the truth was far less noble. Over time, they lost sight of what they were meant to be. They became rigid, blind, and unwilling to question their own flaws. They thought themselves immune to failure, yet failure was inevitable because they refused to change. The very ideals they claimed to uphold became their own undoing, and those who questioned their ways were cast aside without hesitation. Ahsoka Tano was different. She was not just another Jedi Padawan following orders without question. She had a fire in her, a curiosity, a willingness to see beyond the traditions that bound her. Trained by Anakin Skywalker, she was fearless, determined, and strong-willed. She trusted in the Jedi, believed in their teachings, and yet, when she needed them the most, they failed her in the worst way possible. They did not just turn their backs on her, they doubted her, accused her, and abandoned her. And in doing so, they proved something she had not wanted to believe. The Jedi were not what they claimed to be. They spoke of justice, yet they denied her the very thing they swore to uphold. They spoke of wisdom, yet they made decisions rooted in fear. They spoke of loyalty, yet they had none for their own. And when the truth finally came out, when it was clear she had been innocent all along, they expected her to return as if none of it had ever happened. As if trust, once broken, could be restored with nothing more than a few empty words. But Ahsoka saw through them. She saw what they had become, and she refused to ignore it. Walking away was not an easy choice. It was not a victory. It was a loss. A loss of home, a loss of purpose, and a loss of the only family she had ever known. She left behind Anakin, her mentor, her closest friend, the one person who had always believed in her, and in doing so, she left behind a piece of herself. But she knew that staying would mean betraying everything she had come to understand. She could not be part of something that had lost its way. She could not remain loyal to an institution that no longer upheld the values it was meant to represent. The pain of leaving was deep, but the pain of staying would have been far worse. In this video, we will explore why Ahsoka Tano was right to leave the Jedi Order. We will break down the failures of the Order, the betrayals that led to her decision, and the wisdom she gained by walking away. We will examine the weight of her choice, the consequences that followed, and why. In the end, she was stronger because of it. Ahsoka Tano was not just another Jedi, she was something greater. And by walking away, she did what the Jedi themselves were too afraid to do. She saw the truth, and she acted on it. The Jedi Order was supposed to be a beacon of light. They were meant to stand for justice, wisdom, and peace. But somewhere along the way, they lost their way. They became blind to their own arrogance, and deaf to the cries of those they swore to protect. Ahsoka Tano saw it. She felt it. She lived it. The betrayal she experienced was not just about being accused of a crime she did not commit. It was about the people she trusted turning their backs on her. It was about the Jedi refusing to believe in her when she needed them most. Their decision was made before she ever had a chance to defend herself. The Council, the very foundation of the Jedi Order, doubted her loyalty without hesitation. They sat there, robed in their authority, passing judgment without a second thought. They claimed to be wise, yet they acted out of fear. And when the truth came out, when it was clear she had done nothing wrong, they expected her to come back as if nothing had happened. They thought a simple apology would be enough. They thought she would be grateful for their forgiveness. But Ahsoka had seen too much. She saw how they discarded her, how quickly they let their trust crumble. If they could do that to one of their own, then what did that say about their true nature? The Jedi were supposed to be better than this. But they were not. They had become an institution more concerned with rules than with doing what was right. They followed codes and traditions, without questioning whether those things still served the purpose they were meant to. They thought they were above corruption, yet they allowed it to seep into their very foundation. Ahsoka was forced to face a truth she never wanted to believe. The Jedi Order was not what she thought it was. It was not the noble cause she had once admired. It was flawed, broken, and blind to its own failures. And if they could not see the problems within themselves, then how could they ever hope to fix them? So she walked away, not because she was weak, not because she had lost faith in the Force, but because she knew she could not be part of something that refused to acknowledge its own faults. She left because staying would mean losing herself. Anakin did not understand. He wanted her to stay. He needed her to stay. To him, she was not just a student, she was family. And when she walked away, it broke him in ways even he did not fully understand. But how could she stay when she no longer believed in what the Jedi stood for? How could she pretend everything was fine when she had seen the truth for herself? The Jedi were not the heroes they claimed to be. They were not the wise and noble order they pretended to be. Anakin wanted to fix it. He wanted to make things right. But the problem was bigger than him. It was bigger than her. It was the entire system. It was the way the Jedi had allowed themselves to be controlled, manipulated, and used as pawns in a war that should have never been theirs to fight. Ahsoka saw it. She understood it. And though it hurt to leave Anakin behind, she knew she had to, because the person she was becoming could not exist within the confines of the Jedi Order. She needed to find her own path. The Jedi failed to see the darkness rising around them. They failed to recognize the warning signs. They were too proud to set in their ways to admit that they were losing their grip on the very thing they were meant to protect. The galaxy was slipping away, and they did nothing. Ahsoka saw what they refused to acknowledge. The Republic was not what it once was. The lines between good and evil were no longer clear. The war had blurred everything, twisted the truth, and left only chaos in its wake. And the Jedi, instead of guiding the galaxy, had become part of that chaos. They served a republic that had already been corrupted. They took orders from leaders who did not have the people's best interests at heart. They fought in battles that only served to strengthen the enemy they could not even see. And all the while, they believed they were doing the right thing. But Ahsoka knew better. She knew the Jedi were being used. She knew they were fighting a war they could not win. And she knew that if they did not change, if they did not wake up to the reality of what was happening, they would be destroyed. And they were. The Jedi fell because they refused to listen, because they refused to change, because they believed they were untouchable. But the truth was, they had been falling for a long time. Order 66 was not the beginning of their downfall. It was the end of a path they had chosen long ago. They had turned away from compassion. They had abandoned true justice. They had become so obsessed with control that they lost sight of what the Force was truly meant to be. And by the time they realized their mistake, it was already too late. Ahsoka was not there when it happened, but she did not need to be. She had already seen the cracks forming long before the Jedi Order crumbled. She had already felt the weight of their failures pressing down on her. And though she mourned their loss, she also knew that it was inevitable. The Jedi had become their own worst enemy. Their blindness, their arrogance, their refusal to adapt had sealed their fate. And Ahsoka, in leaving them behind, had escaped the destruction they had brought upon themselves. Ahsoka Tano made the right choice. Not because she wanted to, not because it was easy, but because it was the only way to stay true to who she was. The Jedi had given her a purpose, but they had also shown her their flaws, and she could not ignore what she had seen. She did not stop believing in the Force. She did not turn away from doing what was right. But she no longer needed the Jedi to tell her what that meant. She no longer needed their approval to know what justice looked like. She chose her own path, and in doing so, she found a greater truth. The Jedi were not the answer. They had lost their way long before Ahsoka left. They had been blinded by their own self-righteousness, trapped in a system that no longer worked. Ahsoka saw the truth and had the courage to act on it. She walked away when so many others chose to stay, and in doing so, she saved herself. The Jedi Order fell because they refused to change, but Ahsoka Tano refused to let that happen to her. She chose to learn, to grow, to become something more. And in the end, that is what made her different. That is what made her stronger. That is what made her right. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to subscribe to Critical Analysis Hub for deep dives into the Star Wars movies, and check out Critical Analysis Hub Plus for case studies on Star Wars shows. Also, if you want to rep the fandom in style, check out the bio for awesome Star Wars Legos and Funko Pops. May the Force be with you. I'll see you in the next one.